Marketing Kitchen TV Q&A Live. All you need to do is go to @MarketingKitchenTV on Twitter, use the hashtag Q&A, and I will answer your questions here. Welcome, marketing chefs. I've got something truly special cooking in our Omni-Channel oven today. Marketing Kitchen TV Q&A Live, Chapter 6. Up next in the Marketing Kitchen. Welcome to the kitchen, the Marketing Kitchen. Hi, I'm Ron Vining, your host of Marketing Kitchen TV. Marketing Kitchen TV Q&A Live. This is where you ask a question on Twitter with the hashtag Q&A, and I will answer your questions here in the Marketing Kitchen. Welcome back, marketing chefs. This is Chapter 6 of Marketing Kitchen TV Q&A Live. We have just 3 questions that I'm going to cover today. This is 6, and I've got 3 questions for you, or you have 3 questions for me, and I've got 3 answers. All right, let's take our first question here. How IoT can be applied to healthcare to prevent the pandemic, such as, again, I'm not mentioning that word due to Google's algorithm, such as could provide an example in the US. How IoT can be applied to healthcare to prevent, okay, all right, I think I see what your question is here. Can the Internet of Things help to prevent something like this from happening again in the future here in the US? Well, I think we have already been utilizing IoT, so that's Internet of Things, to be able to predict things of this nature. So for example, Google has a whole algorithm that they use based upon people's searches. So I don't know if you know, but Google can predict how bad the cold or flu season might be based upon people around the globe, their search habits, looking up common cold remedies, how to treat the flu, things of that nature. So we're already utilizing that. So in the future though, how could things potentially, like by wearable devices or things like contact tracing, which really bothers me because that is a real violation of my civil rights and my privacy, in my opinion anyway. How can we utilize these types of things, right? How can they be applied to prevent? Well, all of these measures are fantastic, provided that a government doesn't hide information, right? So for example, as you know, I live in Singapore. I myself came down with a really bad flu in November of 2019. And based upon all of the supposed symptoms that have been linked to the thing we're not talking about, I definitely had that in November of 2019. I also came down with the flu again in early 2020, so January, when again, so there was a lot of talk. And remember, I'm closer to Asia than the US is, right? Anyway, there was a lot of talk in different circles about something going around. And of course, so we've also heard the rumors, or we found out, or whatever. I'm not going to lay blame on anybody. That's not what my channel is for. But I would say that all the technology in the world could certainly help to prevent some of the things that I just mentioned, us being aware of something that was going to happen so that then we could prepare for it in advance. But that system breaks down when a government pays off an organization that's supposed to report that. When a government pays off an organization that's supposed to say that people living in that particular country shouldn't be traveling all around the world, and that people from all over around the world shouldn't be traveling to that country to mitigate the spread of that. So for all of that technology, if you get somebody with deep pockets paying off someone who can be bought, then it's not going to solve the problem. So one of the best things that happened for the United States was when the decision was made to cut off air travel to the country. But then again, so that was one of the best moves, but it wasn't done soon enough, and because of political pressure from the other side saying you can't do that. Anyway, why does politics get involved in everything? And I don't want to make this a political answer. I've been trying not to. I'm trying to keep it to the marketing technologies piece of it. So yeah, the technology will work, but the technology fails when people fail. When governments fail, when money talks. All right, so anyway, I hope I answered that question. Great question to kick off this particular session. Thanks a lot, I appreciate it. All right, our second question. Tam, you're back. You actually, the cycle has gone full circle. So you were in our first episode, you're now here in our 6th episode. And your question is, many early internet ventures failed publicly. Some mergers like AOL and Time Warner failed badly, often during economic downturns. How will this current situation impact M&As, especially in the tech industry? So M&As being mergers and acquisitions, right? Fantastic question. Well, I'm going to spin this around just for a second, Tam, and I'm going to talk about how the current economic situation is shuttering some of the globe's finest brick and mortar retailers, or at least they filed for bankruptcy. And I also want to always caution, when a retailer files for bankruptcy, a number of people wrongly say that it was due to e-commerce and Amazon. That's not it. Most of the time when a retailer is filing for bankruptcy, it is because of the fact that due to leveraged buyouts, due to venture capitalist firms who have bought in and given those, saddled those. So Toys R Us is a fantastic example of this. Toys R Us did not fail because of Amazon or e-commerce. Toys R Us had a fantastic e-commerce platform, and Toys R Us had great toys. Toys R Us, a great selection of toys under one roof. I love Toys R Us. The original Toys R Us, not the Toys R Us that we've got now. Okay. What happened, and guess what? Some traditional retailers wanted to buy Toys R Us and bring Toys R Us back, but their offers, their bids were rejected. Why? Because more of these venture capitalists, people want to get their hands on this, and they want to leverage the debt, and they want to make money off of bankruptcy. So that's why retailers are failing, not e-commerce. Sure, there's been footfall drops. Footfall is the amount of people that come in and out of shops. Sure, big retailers have mismanaged or not read into the market, and they haven't created lifestyle centers fast enough. They haven't brought in entertainment aspects, whether that be theme parks, whether that be live entertainment, whether that be making mixed-use facilities that integrate hotels, offices, residential, so that there's always foot traffic. I think about Downtown Crossing in Boston. I'm really getting on a tangent, I'm sorry. Think about Downtown Crossing. When I used to work in Boston, so when I went to Suffolk University, and when I then went on to work for the MBTA, I was in downtown Boston every single day. So I was in downtown Boston every single day for about 20 years, let's say. And it was the most vibrant and most robust. And so you had Filene's, and you had Macy's, and you had Woolworths, you had the Corner Mall, you had Lafayette Place, which is, somebody write to me in the comments. I want you to Google what Lafayette Place was in downtown Boston and tell me what that was and why that closed. But I doubt there's any of you that remember that or even know about it. So downtown Boston was this bustling place. Why? Because it had foot traffic. It had people living there, and then it had people working there. Well, things shift and things change. And the offices moved to other parts of the city. There wasn't any residential there, even though Suffolk University bought space there and put their dorms there. There still wasn't enough footfall for the businesses to be able to survive, so then things changed. And then the retail began to die. And it wasn't due to online. It was just due to different shifts in movement of people, really. And so it's really incumbent upon REITs, real estate investment trust companies, and government to work hand in hand with each other about creating these things. I think about Assembly Row in Somerville, Massachusetts, a very vibrant place where people work, people live, and people shop. And they gather and they hang out. It's a, and there's a good mix there of retail, food and beverage, F&B, and then of course bars, because you need to have almost a 24-hour cycle for these things to work. So what was happening in downtown Boston once the residential aspect left is that the retailers either needed to close at 7 o'clock when no one was around anymore, or they stayed open to 11 and there was no customers, right? So you need these cycles to almost be on like a Las Vegas, if you will, where things remain open 24 hours a day, or they did anyhow. Going specifically to your question, in the early days of the internet, when we had the dot-com bust, it was because we had too many companies offering too many of the same services, and a number of them only had a finite amount of customers. And everybody thought that they were going to be the next big company to have those active registered users that are coming back and spending time there. And it came to find out that really there wasn't a need to have 10. So whereas a shopping mall is fantastic when it has over 100 stores, right? Because then you've got a good diversity and variety, gives you somebody time to spend there, and the opportunity for there to be diversity of product, right, that reaches out to a diversity of customers and their needs, wants, and desires. There isn't a need to have 100 online stores. There isn't a need to have 100 social networks, 100 messaging platforms, 100 streaming services, right? So consolidation needed to happen, and of course a number of them went bust because I think about the day when Amazon had 25 competitors, right? That they all did the same thing that Amazon did, and then it was really about then it was, what was your value proposition? What are you offering? How much cheaper can you sell this book? And so Amazon decided not so much to go on price, they went to go on service, so that they would deliver it for less. They'd deliver it faster. They then invented the Prime membership, which then by paying a fee, right, you got value-added service. And I actually, during the time that I'm locked down at home, I actually love Amazon Prime Video. I'm loving the quantity of free program that I'm getting as a value add to my Prime membership with TV series and films. I also love that when I bought this iPad Pro that I'm recording this video on right now, that I got Apple TV Plus. It didn't have a ton of offerings when it first started, but it's got the content that I have watched. It's been quality over quantity, and it's good. It gives me something to do in addition to recording these videos and doing everything else, right? But from an entertainment side, trying to have that work-life balance. Also, I also have Disney Plus too, and I'm, look to get Netflix, look to get HBO Max at some point. So I got the full spectrum of streaming services. But there's only so much time in the day you can consume content, which I guess gets to the point also your question there. So like AOL Time Warner didn't do so well because what people thought was a good mixing of online and offline didn't really, their cultures didn't mesh, number one. But there really wasn't a need for those two brands to be there. I think about what's left of Time Warner now. So, which is AT&T, right? AT&T bought Time Warner, and then they bought Warner. So they got Warner Brothers, and they got DC, and they got all of that, and so they, of course, have HBO Max, and it's not doing so well. And why is that, right? Because there's already so many players in the space. So when it comes to the physical world, you can have 10 coffee shops, not on the same block, but you can have 10 coffee shops in an area, and they could all do well. You don't necessarily, 10 streaming services that somebody's got to subscribe to won't necessarily do well. 10 robust social networks are probably not likely to happen. So from a venture capitalist perspective, from somebody who's looking to do a startup, you've really got to see what your niche is going to be before you do that. So anyway, how will the pandemic impact mergers and acquisitions, especially in the tech industry? Well, I think what you're going to see happen, right, is that everybody wants to jump onto the bandwagon of being online right now. You can only have so many. Zoom was in the right place, right time. You can only have so many platforms to message with. I think about now, on my phone, right, I've got Apple Instant Messenger, I've got WhatsApp, I've got WeChat, I've got Line, I could certainly do Skype, I could do Facebook Messenger, I could do Instagram Messenger, so LinkedIn Messenger, so I have email, right? How many, and so now Zoom comes into the marketplace, okay, they offered some features, you got WebEx, so how many more people could get into that space? And at some point in time, there's going to be cannibalization. There's going to be a fall off, just like we talk about footfall. There will be a fall off of users. And when that happens, what happens? Then these companies that may be wanting to go IPO will fail. They will potentially be acquired, or they'll file for bankruptcy and they'll be bought up and divided up for scraps. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. But if you're looking to do a startup and you're looking to do it on the online space, make sure you're doing something value added and unique, or you're going to be in trouble. Good thing I'm only doing 3 questions today, because that one took a while. All right, my final question today that we're taking, and I know because I looked at the group, I know that there's one more. I know it's here. I know it's here. All right. This is our final question today. And the reason why I'm choosing this one, and this one isn't from 677, but I didn't answer it last semester. This is actually from the spring, but I think this is pretty good. According to this article from The Verge, Netflix is a leader in terms of market localization. What are some tips and tricks that smaller companies can use in order to expand with market localization? This was, again, one that I didn't answer in the past, but I thought it was good and relevant for the current situation that we are in here. So, Netflix is a leader in terms of market localization. And I'll explain that for those of you that aren't aware. So, for example, living in Southeast Asia, there are a number of different channel offerings for Netflix in Southeast Asia than there are for Netflix in the USA or in Europe or in other parts of the world. So what they've done is Netflix has gone out and procured local content that is specific to that local audience. So for example, if you had Netflix here in Southeast Asia, you would have access to more Korean programming. So Korean dramas are quite popular. You would have access to, obviously, in the language, they all have subtitles, by the way, so if you don't speak the native tongue. But you would have Indian programming, you would have Chinese programming, you'd have Malay programming, you would have just about every race located in the region, you would have programming specific to that. So that's how they are localized. Also, too, licensing agreements are not global. So some of the content, the reason why Disney Plus is not here presently in Singapore is because due to local agreements, a number of the Disney content can be found on some local streaming platforms that are here that are offered by the telcos. And once those licensing agreements are done, that's when Disney Plus could open up in a market like Singapore. That's why Disney Plus has been working its way, opening up around the globe as those licensing agreements end. So, for example, if you had Netflix here, you would be able to watch some Star Wars content, some Marvel content, things like that. And actually, I just happened to notice too that Disney has actually licensed some existing content that's on Disney Plus onto Amazon Prime Video, which I first thought to myself, why are they doing that? And then it dawned on me, it's to do an upsell. So if you don't have Disney Plus, and let's say you watched Captain America: The Winter Soldier, then you wanted to see the next Avengers movie, you would either rent it or buy it from Amazon Prime, which then Disney gets a cut of, or you might say to yourself, why am I buying or renting this? Why don't I subscribe to Disney Plus? So anyway, it's a win-win for both Amazon and Disney in that particular situation. Okay, what are some other tips and tricks that, after doing 6 episodes back to back to back here, you're not going to see them back to back to back most likely, but that's how I'm recording them. I'm losing my voice. What are some tips and tricks that smaller companies can use in order to expand with market localization? Well, I always love this discussion about globalization, personalization, and localization. Now, if you're in the digital space, you can actually do away, like as in Netflix is in that example there. You can really do personalization. You can actually find out who your customer is, and you can offer them specifically something that would appeal to them. So that's something truly unique to personalization on digital. When it comes to physical space, you really then want to localize. So what are some tips and tricks that smaller companies can do? Well, you would want to have product that appeals to the local market. So there are, for example, products in a local store here in Singapore that probably would not sell so well in mainstream North America unless they were being sold in a heavily Asia traffic location. The same thing is true in reverse. So if you would want your products and services to match the wants, needs, and desires of the local market, that's number one. When it comes to your advertising, you would want to be culturally sensitive to things that are happening in that particular market. And you would also want to use faces that resemble people from the local market. Why? Because of identification. Now, it doesn't mean that all of it has to change, but there's actually some legislation in some countries that require that. There's fines and different things for to make sure that your localization is not patronizing or demeaning to the local culture. So there's a number of things that you have to look at. Obviously, another trick is translation. So if you're going to be localizing in a market, you would want to make sure that you are speaking the language of that particular market. And that language doesn't just have to be the spoken language. It's iconography. Again, it's the product. It's the colors. You of course now, when I did a project for Standard Chartered Bank, it was a brand guardianship program. And so it was about looking at how Standard Chartered Bank and their franchises, how they were distributed across the globe, how those franchises were not respecting the brand values of the company in terms of its language, its iconography, its brand colors, even the way its logos were represented, and the motto that Standard Chartered Bank uses, which is called "Here for Good." And that was being applied in crazy different permutations that did not adhere to the brand values of the company. So one of the things that I did as the consultant and the team that I was working with is that we looked at the communication globally, put together a set of guidelines, and we put that out, and then we did training in the local markets, basically saying this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do, this is how a billboard has to look, this is how an ad has to look. There was another brand that I worked for where I was the CMO where I did something similar, where I demanded that all of the communication, even down to the business cards, came back to my desk so that I could look at it to make sure that the logo and the font and the motto was being properly utilized, as well as shutting down all of the localized webs. There were local market websites for this company that I had worked for. It was International SOS, the brand, the division was Aspire Lifestyles. There were local market sites that were doing their own thing in their own language, and I want it to be in the native tongue, but I didn't want them doing their own thing. So I had to shut them all down. I had to shut down all of the Facebook pages, all the Twitter feeds, all of that, so that there was one centralized, uniform platform and voice and message there. Then there could be micro sites that were good, managed by the home brand, well, overseen by the home brand, managed by the local players, right? Anyhow, I wanted to throw that in as we move on into the semester, because I think it's very important to think about the fact that when we're utilizing social media, it's a global audience. But how are we making sure that while our content is global, so our channel, rather, our distribution channel is global, how are we localizing our content, and how are we personalizing that content so that, going back to what I started about talking in chapter 1, this is your company and you've got your objectives. This is your consumer, they have their wants, needs, desires. This is the channel. How are we reaching out? What is that message that we're giving from here to here? And then how are we listening back to? And how is that whole process working? All right, that is it. I hope that that you found this useful. All right, thank you very much for your questions for the first 6 episodes of our Marketing Kitchen TV Q&A Live for the summer of 2020. I look forward to going on to Twitter and seeing more of your Q&A questions and then answering them here in the weeks to come. I appreciate you joining us for Marketing Kitchen TV Q&A Live. Remember, all you need to do is go to @MarketingKitchenTV on Twitter, use the hashtag Q&A, and I will answer your questions here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember, there's always fresh content simmering on our storytelling stovetop. So whatever happens in this kitchen shouldn't stay in this marketing kitchen. I'm Ron Vining, your host, reminding you to invite your family and friends to the next episode of Marketing Kitchen TV.